Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am blessed and honored to be here with our friend today, Valencia Culbreath, Global Head, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Graebel Companies. Valencia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Better now that I'm here with you, Ben.
It's so great to have you. You're one of my favorite guests to bring on. I just love the conversations. I always feel like I leave enlightened and smarter and more aware. And it just fills my cup. So thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm super excited. And where in the world are you today, Valencia?
I am in Denver, Colorado, where it's quite cold.
Yeah, it's cold everywhere right now. I want to know, if you're watching this show, where are you and is it cold? Let us know. Check in the comments. Get in there. Let us know who you are, where you are, how cold is it where you are? Because I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is supposed to be warm all the time. And it's like, I woke up this morning, it was 34 degrees. Cactuses are dying. Cacti are dying. Lizards are dying. I mean, it's crazy down here. Climate change is real, people. It's wild out here. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying. Tessa Boone. Thank you, Tessa Boone. Love you so much. Tessa Boone. Hello from Michigan. Tessa, is it cold there? I know the answer to that question. I used to live in Michigan. Oh my goodness! Now, are you from Colorado originally? What's your story, Valencia?
No, actually, I am the youngest of four to my mother, who's an educator, and my dad, who was military, so Army branch. So we moved quite a bit, relocated. So it's been in my blood apparently since I was a baby.
Well, and did it make you a globally curious person, or am I stretching the truth just a
bit? Perhaps, but it also made me want to put down roots, right? To kind of have some consistency in my world. So, yeah.
Oh, gosh, I crave consistency being on the road so much, having a family and just trying to be a good dad and a good husband. It's like, yeah. I hear that. And I guess consistency maybe is the kind of thing that we're trying to replicate, or at least kind of bridge for our transferees as they go through these processes all the time. That's our value prop. Mary Beth Nitz. Hi, Ben and Valencia, checking in from cold and icy North Texas. Looking forward to today's show. Yes, Mary Beth, you're in Dallas, and I flew out of Dallas. I actually bumped my flight up to miss the ice. So I hope you're staying warm and the power is good and everybody's safe there. Aaron, snowing here in Kansas City. See what I mean?
It's cold everywhere.
It is. Jana, hello. It's hot in Rio. Pre-Carnival. So excited for this show. Happy to have you with us, Valencia.
Oh, thank you.
That Jana's amazing. Tim Quirk, hello from Western New York. Tim, you got snow on the ground? Yes or no? Let me know. Darren Burley, best DE&I leader in the world. Hi, all. That is a fact, actually. I actually looked on Wikipedia, and they actually had you listed under best DE&I leader in the world.
Thanks, Darren.
All kidding aside, Darren, love you, Darren. All kidding aside, though, I think what you're doing right now, and I'm kind of far away from it, but I'm just kind of watching and just kind of creeping and just kind of checking it out. But I think what you're doing is best in class in our, at least in Relo world. Can you tell people about your role? It's grown, it's changed, it's evolving. What kind of things are you doing right now at Graebel from a DE&I perspective and in general?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. It has grown. Over the last couple of years, it's incredible how DEI is really at the forefront of everyone's minds, right? Clients, suppliers, transferees, and then of course internal, right? We never forget to start with our own house, but how it's grown to affect and support everyone we work with it's quite incredible. It's been an incredible journey. It's been super fun to be able to support, the idea of how benefits, can tie into diversity and equity and inclusion, how we can support the changing demographics of the transferees and ensuring they have a sense of belonging, right? And they can show up authentically with our consultant transferee relationships, right? And then, of course, if we're an extension of a client, right? Our suppliers are also an extension. And what does that look like in their space? And it's so incredibly different because of the different categories they're in. What are the challenges that they have regionally and nuanced, right? So being able to support that education and how we can all have, again, I'm going to use this word, consistency in our approach. It's powerful.
You know, it's interesting. We talk about diversity and we talk about consistency. And these are two words that may or may not go together sometimes. So for me, it's always about how do I thread the needle? How do I find the balance? How do I find how they do meld and mix? And before I'm going to ask you that question, before I do, I'm going to also open it up to our friends out there watching. I see you, Tasha, Tim, Vinny, Richard, Darren. I see all you. So Vinny, Ben, miss you too. Love you, man. Get in the comments. Ask your questions about DEI. This is a safe place for us all to learn, right, and share our perspectives. It's an inclusive space. But how do we balance consistency, which we're trying to achieve in our service delivery? We're trying to see in our achieve in our operations, right? Continuity of operations and being able to become profitable companies. And how do we infuse the appropriate and necessary amounts of diversity? How does it balance? How does it work?
Yeah, I know they seem a bit opposite of each other, but Ben, when we talk about the consistency, you want to have a consistent experience. And that's going to look different depending on who you're moving and what those needs are. So it plays off of the equal is not always equitable, right? And so we want to serve in equity and meet the needs of the demographics we are moving.
I love that, what you said there. And I think I would even say like a consistent result, like success, but how success is measured and quantified by different transferees or different employees or different stakeholders might be different in meeting them maybe where they are and what their needs are kind of.
Yep. Yep. It's not a one size fits all, right?
That was a big mistake I made early in my management career, was thinking that FAIR was treating everyone the same. And it wasn't until I really grew a lot as a leader, I think, that I started to understand that giving people what they needed, and everybody has different needs, was really being a leader.
Yep.
Because I was like a handbook guy. I was like, well, in the handbook, it says, we have to, in the handbook, and people didn't like it. I guess they don't like that. So that was a real eye opener for me personally.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you give everyone that same equal access to things, but what that looks like may be different for different people. And again, that's what you said, right? Becoming that leader and serving your employees based on what they need is incredibly important. But that also takes incredible leadership, understanding and knowing your employees. You can't do that if you haven't invested the time to get to know them. And then you end up just giving everyone the same thing, which doesn't work.
Right, because it's easy that way too, right? Because it's easier to just give a blanket policy and not really get to know people and understand and treat them as people. I want to hear from folks out there who are watching. We got amazing people watching. How are you customizing that experience to give amazing kind of results and outcomes for people and individuals in your organization or transferees that you've seen? What have you seen done? I'd love it if this could be a place where we could just share some really cool tips and tricks. Tasha saying, hi, Valencia. It's cold here in Phoenix, 54 degrees. Tasha, we're like neighbors right now. What's up, Tasha? Let's see. Vinny, hi, Valencia and Ben. Valencia, is so good seeing you again. Miss you, friend. Super cool. Richard Majewski, hi from London. London's always in the house here on Love and Relo. That's what's up. Timothy Nowak, hi, Valencia. You are amazing. Greetings from freezing Denver.
It is freezing.
It's chilly willy outside. I'd love to know what you've seen out there in your organizations. And Valencia, I'd love to ask you, oh, look at this. Richard, this is a great point. Getting to know people must be affected with work from home. How do we bridge the work from home gap?
Yeah,
to
that's
get to
not
know people.
easy,
Yeah.
right? I mean, being in this virtual space, I think it takes more deliberateness, if you will, intentionality.
Intentionality. Yeah.
So if you're not intentional about getting to know someone and understanding your team, yeah, you may have to work differently, but we're all working differently right now. So I think we have to be deliberate and we have to be intentional to get to know folks better. We got to get creative.
We do got to get creative, you know. And I was having lunch with some RMC leaders today, actually, and we talked about this. What is the future the of the talent development look like in an organization when people are remote and you don't have those impromptu one-on-one moments or the mentorship that just kind of happens naturally, the water cooler talk? Does it pose challenges to inclusivity and to mentorship? Does it present opportunities maybe in level the playing field?
Mhm.
Maybe. Valencia, what do you think?
Yeah, so I would lean towards the latter. I think it creates additional opportunities because a lot of times folks who were at corporate or like the headquarters, right? They have closer connections with leadership because that's where they tend to all be. And so I've heard how hard it was to make those relationships. This is pre work from home, of course, right? When you're in a satellite office or you're
Yep.
not traveling to HQ, and how do you develop these relationships? So yeah, again,
Yes.
I'm going to go back to intentional. We have to be deliberate and we have to make those experiences happen. So because they're not going to happen just naturally anymore because we're not in space together.
You're so right about that. I started my career at a satellite office, and we had once a quarter, we had town halls, and that was our opportunity to interface with senior management. And you had to catch, her eye, the VP's eye, or his eye, the director's eye, and say something really interesting in a meeting, or maybe there was a
Yeah.
picnic or something like that, and you had to grab 5 minutes at a picnic, but there was no opportunity really to interface. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying there, and I also have to believe, there's cliques in offices, right?
Yep.
And people who, let's be honest, right? Like people who are similar backgrounds or, look alike or, genders or whatever, a lot of time they tend to hang out together or sit together at lunch or maybe go out for a drink after work or whatever.
Mhm.
And those types of boys club, we hear about all the time, right? The boys club, right? Those types of cliques start to exist and become really strong in organizations. And it's funny because people who are inside those cliques feel like they're a strength. People who are outside those cliques feel like they're a real barrier, right? And a real
Yeah.
limiter for them in their career and probably for the company as a whole. So I kind of almost think like working from home, you probably don't have those cliques as much.
Yeah, definitely not as much. And you get, and I'll just speak for myself, but I've had so much more opportunity to get to know and meet people globally, that I wouldn't have otherwise been able, have meetings with face to face.
Yeah.
Right. I know some people are tired and they're burnt out and the camera and, go from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting. But um, I can't tell you how beneficial it has been for me in building relationships with people that are not in Colorado. And that has been amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I'm same for sure. We got people tuning in here. Let's see here. Maria, yes, be intentional. Hit that like button right now. I see a lot of applause buttons going off. Hit that like button. Send a little love out here to Denver and to Phoenix, where I am. She says, yes, be intentional and listen in with the intent to learn, not the intent to respond. How important is this, Valencia?
I love that. Yeah. So listening is so important. And I don't think we do that well enough. Right. And I think we could all learn to listen better and
Yeah.
not just waiting to say something, but to really take in what the person is saying and to hear them. It's amazing what you learn when you listen.
Yeah. Wow. I'm guilty of that. Here I am also always listening with my eye on what the next question is. So I'm like, am I actually hearing
kind of your
what
job,
my guests
so that doesn't really count.
my job is to have something to say next all the time. So I'm like half listening to Valencia and half thinking, okay, what am I going to say next? Okay, what do the questions say? No, but great point, Maria. Great point. Keep these points coming. I want to hear your perspective. Richard saying mentorship, etc. A massive issue when new members of the team have not worked with the rest of the team and miss out on understanding the culture. Culture. I want to unpack this word for a minute.
Let's do that.
Culture is a word that's often used as a strength or pride, like, oh, we have great culture, or our culture is such. But then it's recently been brought to my attention that culture can also be code for other things. And culture can also reinforce the wrong behaviors or the wrong culture. You know, what are your thoughts with the word culture in an organization? What's right? What's wrong? How do we navigate that concept?
Culture is imperative, I think, in having a healthy and a non-toxic culture is huge. People leave because of bad culture and the feeling of the organization. Where I struggle with using the word culture and is the idea of having someone fit into a culture, if that makes sense, right? So people can say, yeah, I didn't hire that person or maybe promote that person because I didn't think it was a good culture fit.
Yes.
And I feel like that is coded.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. What coded for what?
Well, different. And I would ask people, instead of trying to fit into the culture, because we don't want homogenous culture. Right? Let's have a culture add. How can they add to the culture rather than fit in a culture?
This is brilliant. So I'm gonna call out, right? So I'm gonna call out when people say didn't fit the culture. A lot of times this is what people, because I'm over here, I find myself in the hiring space, right, in the recruiting and talent space, right? And they'll say, I want an athlete. I want people that played sports in college, right? I want people. You see where this is going already. Like, you're smiling already. You see this. This is real life. People do this, okay? Enterprise rent a car. Sorry, people do this. This is real life stuff, right? And so then you get a culture of people who played, sport, very type A, very like aggressive, very like people start using terms like alpha, right? I mean, this is
competitive.
Yes.
Yep.
I want people who are going to like try to kill each other for business and whatever, right? And people hire for this. And I love what you're saying about culture add, right? Because then you're creating balance. And I think it is important, and this is the question I was asking a hiring manager recently when they were talking about culture. I was trying to understand it more. And I was like, well, are you saying culture or are you saying like values?
Different.
Yeah.
Different, right?
Because it's okay. It's good to hire for values.
Hire for values, but not for culture fit.
Truth,
right?
love, integrity. These are values versus did everybody play, baseball in college, right? Like, and what does that look like, of course, when you're organizations like that?
Yeah. And I was just going to point out, like, when we talk about culture add, that doesn't take away from the idea that they share the same values as everyone in the culture or in the company, for sure.
Really interesting. Tim Quirk. Tim, you're jumping ahead. I love it. Tim is in the booth producing today, so he's just like super dialed in right now. He's saying, is culture overrated or underrated? Yes, Tim, we're going to play overrated or underrated later in the show, and we've got some really fun ones lined up. But yeah, let's throw it out there. And I want to ask everybody in the comments right now. We got a bunch of people on LinkedIn who are watching. They're probably lurking. Half of them are watching, reading their email right now. One of them's on a conference call. I know who you are. Someone in the bathroom. Here's the deal. I want you to answer this right now. Is culture overrated or underrated? Throw it in the comments. Let's take a poll right now. It's okay if you disagree, or it's okay. Just I want to know what you think, really what you think. I'm not trying to stack the deck here. But we are gonna give our opinions on this. Valencia, is culture overrated or underrated?
I think it's underrated.
Woo! See, she went the other way. See that? Look at that. Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think it's it's underrated because it is so incredibly important. And if you don't have solid culture and a culture where people can show up, people can feel valued, people can feel respected, if your company culture isn't a place where people can feel psychologically, physically, and emotionally safe, they can't do their best work. Mm-hmm. So if you're a leader and you're like culture smulcher, then like
that's a new
it's not even a word, right? But no. But then how do you create an organization of belonging and inclusiveness, right? If you don't have a great culture.
Okay, when you say safe when you feel safe at work, that doesn't mean, I'm assuming you're not talking about, are there lights in the parking lot? What are you talking about by feeling safe at work?
So there was I'll just give you an example. There was something that came out not that long ago. I think it was last year in 2021 around microaggressions and how pervasive microaggressions are in the workplace.
You're going to have to define microaggressions for us too.
So microaggressions are those subtle slights that really serve to exclude individuals based off a piece of their identity. Mm. And a study was done, and 66% of Black employees prefer to work remotely because it helps them avoid microaggressions in the workplace. Wow. 66% would rather not go back to avoid harm.
How does that compare to their white counterparts, Latinx?
Ready to go back.
Ready to go back.
And I would say it's there was also a stat around our Latinx population, but our white brothers and sisters were more ready and ready to get back into space with each other.
Yeah.
But what remote work did, it created a sense of safety in other ways.
I think other groups of folks were probably more included as well in the remote work. I'd love to know what your thoughts are if you're watching out there, and we're going to see the results of our impromptu straw poll here. Do you feel like remote work is more inclusive? I'd love to ask the audience, do you feel like remote work is more inclusive? Yes, no, why? I'd love to know. We've got people coming in here in the comments here. Kristen saying she feels culture is underrated. Richard says culture is overrated. Is that culture or couture? Culture is overrated. I like couture. Al Blumenberg says underrated. What's up, Al? Good to see you, buddy. Jana, underrated. Hey, Jana. Yeah, look at this. Let's see what Richard say. I'd like to think culture is dynamic depending on the current team because the world around changes and so team changes and culture changes. Example, the old IBMers might not be employable today. That's a whole nother conversation too, around ageism, around, how do we not let people feel left behind?
Yeah.
Right. We talk about I'm going to go there right now. Let's talk about that. Right. Because I think this is a huge population within the, that feels left out sometimes of the DE&I space is, and I'm not saying that, Richard, this is where you're coming from, but I'm just going to put this out there anyway, because this is what I do. Older white men who feel also very afraid about being left behind and not included in the future state of work. Right. And a lot of times it's because they had a really great run. They had a great run, and it's a little bit of the privilege kind of wanes, and you kind of it's like, oh gosh, and I'm not, again, Richard, this isn't about you, but this just made me think of this, right? And it's like, how do we keep folks included as the future state of work changes, and groups who had some privilege in the old state? How do we help them find their place in the new state of work in a very inclusive environment?
Yeah, well, it's not the zero-sum type of game, right? And
it's a great point.
At least in our organization, so we always talk about diversity being every and all, It doesn't exclude anyone. But then when we look at the equity piece and we're creating fair access, it's about leveling that playing field, right? So it's not to take from one to give to the other. It's about providing access to that everybody has an opportunity now. And that I would hope should feel good to everybody.
Yeah, in principle, how can you argue with that, right? How can you argue with everybody gets an opportunity? And I think that many people have gone through their careers, and this is kind of product of an old way of thinking about it, that it is a zero-sum game, that it is a dog-eat-dog world, that we're fighting for the same promotion, we're fighting for the same dollar within a spend, but I think I'm fortunate to have an abundance mindset where there is more out there. There's always more, and it's not we're just fighting over the same piece of food, So that's a great point. Great point. Let's see, we got some great comments. These comments are so great, and the people are so engaged. Keep these likes coming. Hit the like button right now. Let's other people know this conversation is happening and that they should get involved. Kristen, there's a need for the positive, safe culture. It needs to start from the top and work itself left, right, and down. I've been part of organizations wherein the culture of the overarching organization was thought to be positive and progressive, and yet the culture of the team I was on was full of toxicity. This is so great. I want to know, how do people know if they're in a toxic work environment? And more importantly, even, well, that's important, but how do I know if I'm a leader of an organization if I'm creating a toxic work environment? Because it doesn't seem toxic to me. Seems great. I love it. Everything's working great. Everything's blah, blah, blah. I tell people what to do. They do it. What's the problem here, right? How do leaders know? How can we check ourselves as leaders to say, am I creating a toxic space?
No, that's good, because I think there's a couple ways to assess that. And we do engagement surveys, right? We want to understand at every level how engaged people are and how they're thinking about the individual pieces of the organization. We're constantly talking about our values of truth, love, and integrity, and it's so ingrained in the things that we say. I feel like I use it all the time, right? Well, if we're looking through the lens of our values, then we need to be doing X or doing Y, or we need to hold people accountable. Because if you have someone who's toxic, and I would say, Kristen, what a great example. She mentioned she was a part of an organization. So what happened? She was in a toxic culture, and my assumption is she left. So if your culture is toxic and people are leaving, you'll see that in your attrition, in your exit surveys. You'll have problems keeping people employed in your organization.
Yeah, and getting that feedback, I think, is super key. And getting that feedback before it's too late is also key, right? You can't always rely on like exit interviews to get that information, because some people don't even do exit interviews. I saw a LinkedIn poll recently where like 50% of people didn't even believe that they should tell the truth on an exit interview.
I saw that.
So people are leaving the company, and they're like, oh, it wasn't you. I just had personal things, and I just had to go way over here to get far away because it was something inside of me, not you. And I just had opportunity to mess up for less money, and I just went over here. And it's like so then CEOs and leaders hear that information, and we're like, oh, see, it's not us. It's just market forces, whatever. And I think that you said something before. I think you said like engagement surveys. So I was in an organization that I think it was a fine company. I wouldn't like hold it up and say like this is the best, but they did employee engagement surveys. Now there was an issue that employees didn't always feel like they were anonymous, which is a problem.
That's a problem.
You have to be anonymous.
Absolutely.
If I'm going to tell you how I really feel, I need to know that it's safe, that there's no retribution, that I'm not going to be put on a naughty list somewhere. And I think you take that, and then they would, at every town hall, they would trot out the results, and they would show it over time, and they would show it increasing or decrease. We had a major RIF one year where 10% of the staff was let go.
Yeah.
Well, you know that engagement or plummet.
Sure.
Right. And if you're tracking this over time, you're seeing this thing kind of like the heart rate of the business, right? And you're seeing how engaged your employees are, which is their likelihood to stay, which is their productivity. I mean, these are the things we sell in Relo, but we fail to measure in Relo.
You said something around, tracking and being transparent, right, with the outcomes. Incredibly important. So I fully agree with that. The other piece I would suggest that people are doing is don't just tell me our score went up by whatever 30 points. What did we do in between the last score and this score that would support that increase, right? Because sometimes these are a point in time. I understand that, right? Like you said, after a riff, things dropped. But that makes sense. You can tie it back to the riff. But when things are going well or improving, I think it's very important to show, here's what we put in place from the last one because of the feedback we got. And if people are seeing outcomes or, intentional changes or something's different, we're taking the feedback and we're doing something about it, and it's working and we're getting better scores. That is more valuable to the employee, and the employee is more likely to give honest feedback because they see the fruits of their effort.
Yeah, that's great. I need to start doing that stuff. We got such a small organization that it's like, I mean, I don't know if I got the sample size for it. I don't know if, it's like, I'm getting off topic. There's great comments coming in here. All right, let me honor these comments first. Tim saying 2 jobs I've disliked the most said they hired me because I was a culture fit. So interesting. Tim, how do you interpret that? Do you think that they thought you were something you weren't? Do they think that they don't understand what culture is? Do you think that, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about that comment.
We might have to debrief in the green room. We're going to have to name names. We're going to have to dig into this. Culture underrated. We have to call people instead. We have to call people in instead of calling them out. Ooh, when we call people out, we assume the worst. If we call people in, it creates a conversation.
Yes, I love that. It's all about calling people in, right? If we assume good intent, we can call people in. They're more open to learn and to be educated. It's not a gotcha culture, right? Calling people out assumes that, like this user said, that it is negative or they are bad. No, we are human and we make mistakes. So let's call someone in and lean in with that curiosity to support their own awareness, learning, and education.
Beautiful. Call people in, and that's like positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement, right? Instead of telling people what they did wrong, tell them what they did right, and then hold that up as a standard for others. Aaron, in some ways, I would say remote work is more inclusive than it eliminates the exterior factors like new car versus older luxury brand of clothing versus Walmart, expensive hair color versus box. And we aren't identified by those factors because they're not necessarily apparent. Does that make sense? Okay. Cool. Interesting. I'm not wearing my ties nearly as much as I used to. I'll tell you what. Let's see here. Al, need to run. What's up, Al? Good to see. Had the same experience as Kristen. Corporate culture, the umbrella company was amazing, but my experience with our business unit was super toxic and unhealthy. How do we make sure that, as leaders, we have the best of intentions? We write on our board, truth, love, and integrity. We have a beautiful mission statement. We really want people to be happy and love it here, but we don't necessarily know what goes on in all corners of the organization. How do we make sure that all of our leaders are aligned on these things?
You've got to talk to your people.
There's no way around it. I'm looking for shortcuts, Valencia. I'm looking for little check the box silver bullets. Nope. You're making me talk to people.
Nope,
You're making me connect, roll up my sleeves, do the work,
You have to have trust. There's got to be trust within the organization. Like you had mentioned earlier, the idea of being anonymous because of retaliation. If there's a culture of retaliation, that's a problem. If there are employees that assume that they can't speak their truth because they'll be retaliated against, right there, you have a problem.
Yeah. This is interesting too. My first thought when I think about this, I mean, I'm a white male, so, I have it easier than most, I suppose. But when political seasons come around, right? I mean, that's when I sometimes have to hide or used to have to hide in organizations, right? Because I wouldn't necessarily align with people, right? Um, interesting, really interesting. Richard, toxic leader knows when the team leaves for the competition. Hmm. So if they go to a company that looks just like you except nicer, that's when it was actually you. Mary Beth this, I feel like maintaining a company's culture is like maintaining a marriage. It requires attention and often hard work. You can't just say you have a good culture, but not work hard to keep it. That way you can't complacent. Yes, how much culture is lip service? It's like culture. I heard, the old adage, culture is what you do or what your people do when you're not looking, right? If you're a leader. But then the leaders are espousing that they have great culture. But it's almost like as a leader, you can't necessarily define if you have a good culture or not. You have to be listening to your people.
Absolutely.
That. Oh my gosh, we've really gone down the culture rabbit hole here, but I dig it. People are into it. Mary Beth says, I feel like maintaining a company's culture is like maintaining, yeah, for sure. Let's see. Tim's giving us some more advice. He said more insight. The CEO had the culture, but my immediate supervisor was the opposite of the culture. It was truly respected by the CEO. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, when bad people, when there's people in the organization that are kind of protected or favored, and they're not necessarily good to the people downstream, oof, that to me
That's
is a
tough.
toxic. That's
That's
toxic
tough.
because then when you report that behavior, you don't feel safe
No.
reporting that behavior.
Yeah.
Hmm. Richard, Richard has a question. What if the best performer in terms of revenue is not a good culture fit? What price are we willing to pay for culture?
My opinion, I say you protect your house, right? And that means protecting your culture because I'm sorry. I'm leaning towards sorry person, high performer.
Mm-hmm.
No, because
Mm-hmm.
one bad apple can spoil the bunch, right? And
Yeah.
that's where my mind goes immediately. And now you have a bigger problem on your hand.
Yeah. And I go back to Mary Beth, who used the marriage analogy. And you talk about your house, right? We're talking in like domestic terms, right? So the marriage analogy, right? Say I go out and I take an amazing job for double the money, but I lose my marriage and my family for it. Like, is it
Mm,
worth it? No, it's not,
right.
right?
No.
Like the health of the company and the culture of the company is kind of like the foundation for it all, right? And so
Yeah.
I think you're right. And Richard, I would say, this person might seem like good revenue in the near term, the way that the company is presently construed, but you get rid of that person and watch the company grow in other ways, and you might find that was good revenue under what you thought was success, within the framework or the standards that you thought was success before, but the company might double in 2-3 years, and all of a sudden, like that wasn't actually, like, we were holding on to something that was actually more of an anchor, for us, and not taking us where we needed to go.
I love that, Ben.
Thank you. I just came up with that. Ruby, Ruby checking in. Richard with the boy George had it right. The Culture Club. That's funny. I want to talk. We're talking about a little bit about language here, and we went down the culture rabbit hole, and I thank everybody for hanging there. We're talking about language a little bit, and it's Black History Month.
Hmm. Happy Black
And
History Month, by the way.
is that even what you say? Do you say happy? Do you say
You
have a
can, yeah.
wonderful, like, happy? Okay. Happy Black History Month. Well, and it doesn't always feel happy, either, right?
Yeah.
As we talk about like the stories and everything, right? Because it's rife with adversity and overcoming, but I guess that's great to overcome. Let's talk a little bit about language, and I'm going to stop talking so much. But tell us what your thoughts around language are.
Yeah. So really my hope was to get through how we need to better understand the words, the phrases that we're using, so that we can say what we mean. And I'm thinking about this in multiple ways. Language can be divisive, it can be confusing, and it can be hurtful in ignorance, right? So when we are a global company, or even not, right? If you're a domestic company, but even more so as a global company, when we use phrases that don't really, or I'm sorry, that aren't clear to what we mean, that's problematic for our global partners. And I'll
What
give
do
you
you what do you mean
examples.
by that
Yeah.
exactly? What's an example of not clear to people? Because as a speaker, I know what I mean,
Sure, right?
right?
So when you're saying things like, and I'm gonna grab one that has some, some history, sold down the river,
Oh,
right?
yeah. If we
If
really unpack that, that's
yeah,
ugly.
okay. So that one I've heard, right? You getting sold down the river, and we know that's rooted in actual history where enslaved persons were sold down the river, Ohio or Mississippi, to the southern plantations where they were harsher conditions because they were either stepping out of line, or the slave masters were looking to sell for money, right? So when someone talks about being sold down the river in space with me, that's hurtful. Now, they may not understand the context of it or the history behind it. And so they're thinking it's more about, oh, well, I was betrayed, or I was lied to, or something like that. But then let's just say what we mean. And again, if we're on calls with, our friends in APAC or our friends in EMEA, when you use that language, have you lost them? They don't
I
have a connection.
I used a phrase like that, not that phrase, but a phrase where I felt like, and I was corrected immediately, but thank God by my friend, and she was like, Ben, you can't say. I'm like, and I like thought about it, I'm like, why? And I'm like, oh, because this has a cultural connotation that's negative. Like I didn't even think about it. Another one that I heard all the time was the word gyp, right?
Yep.
Like, oh, you
Yep.
gypped me out of $1 or something,
Yep.
and didn't know growing up that was referring to, I think, gypsies,
Gypsies. Yep.
right? And they're
Yep.
and some negative stereotype about gypsies, right?
Yeah.
And our language is rife with this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I have lists of all the different phrases just that can come
Are
to
there a few
mind.
more you want to share with us, just so we
Yeah.
can be better?
Yeah. So I hear a lot in regards to like low man on the totem pole.
I've said that before. What's I don't
So
know.
just, well, one, understanding how the totem poles are created and designed and their value. The bottom areas are not necessarily higher in a hierarchical sense, the lowest, right? So one, it's inaccurate,
Okay.
and it's a use of something that's incredibly sacred to our indigenous peoples.
Yeah.
How about powwow?
Thank you. Let's have a powwow.
Anyone
Yeah.
said,
No.
let's go have a powwow? Well, let's
Yeah.
not say that. Let's say, you know what? Let's meet
Let's
up.
have a meeting.
Let's have a meeting. So again, say what you
Why do we
mean.
do
So
that?
you
Why do
can
we
mean
do
what you
that?
say.
We do that all the time. Why
do
do
it
we
all
do
the time?
Does it make it sound cool? Like we like, hey, let's have a, I don't know. Okay. All
Right.
right. Let's see.
Right.
This is good. This is helpful for me. Now, every time I think of these things or hear these things, I'm going to know.
Yeah.
So this is helpful.
Yeah. I have one other one that I heard recently, and it was, someone had gone off the reservation. And that one, yeah. Yeah. So that one is harmful. So for, you probably already recognize this. But for those that are watching, it is harmful because when Native Americans, our indigenous peoples, were kept on the reservation and held there and forced to be there, whenever someone left the reservation or tried to escape the reservation, they were typically murdered, right? You have to
I didn't know
catch them
that.
because they went off the reservation and they ended up being killed, right?
Oh my gosh.
For going off the reservation. So,
oh my gosh.
So those things have such, really meaningful and deeply rooted historical emotional ties, right? For people. And I don't have to be an indigenous person to know that that's offensive, right? And so that's the other thing. It's not just whose space are you in and can you say it in front of some and not others. It's just not okay.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that to our. Yeah, Jonathan, thank you for bringing this. Yeah, thank you. Jamie, wow, I just learned something. Never thought about the connection. Yeah, we don't think about it, right? Because we're just born, we're raised, with these phrases, and that's why we talk about things like privilege and bias and things like that being institutionalized, because these are language, this is institutions in our society. It's in the walls, like, and we think about the bias that we can see, but there's so much, it's like tip of the iceberg. There's so much of it's beneath the surface that we don't even see. So I think that we have to realize that the unconscious bias is far greater in size than the conscious bias.
Yeah.
And just being open to hearing from people when they say something, and being sensitive enough to say, when somebody says, this is hurtful to me, recognizing how hard it is for that person to even articulate that, how vulnerable they're even being to tell you that they're in pain. And the second thing, to give credence to that, even though it doesn't necessarily seem like it would be hurtful to you, you can't understand it maybe logically. You need to just even understand it. Just even though you can't understand it, you need to be there and hear it, and accept it. Thank you. Accept it. That's the word.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, for sure. One of the other ones that came to mind was Peanut Gallery. I don't know if you've
Tell us about this one, because I heard this, but I forgot the connection.
Yeah. So in movie theaters, when, so everything was segregated, right? There were seats for whites and seats for blacks. And the seats where Black people were allowed to go to the theater were like the really, the cheapest, worst, furthest away, right? They were not the great seats.
Were they up top even? Were they even in the
yeah. So completely separate. So this was during the time of segregation. And so folks had tied that to, well, Peanuts, I think, were introduced to America right around that same time. But they were noted as the Peanut Gallery, and it refers to, the Black groups of folks sitting in those, lower end areas. So if we're trying to talk about the Peanut Gallery and you're referring to any group, right? It's really about, let's just say no comments, please, or you're really referring to maybe someone who was uninformed, but the tie back to race and where it originated from is just not great.
Well, we're learning a lot of things right now, and I think Richard's asking this question is on the nose here, Richard.
Yeah, that's great.
Is it bad if we didn't mean anything by it? We hear this all the time. I say, well, I didn't mean anything by it. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't mean it.
I accept that 100%. So I would say once you know better, then you do better next time. So if you're using that language today, and now you've listened to this, you've listened to us, and if you, I think, continue to use it, I think that's a different story.
Yeah.
But if you use it and we're told, hey, that's rooted in some really racist, times and language, I'd prefer you to use something else, then okay. Right. Now we just make changes in our communication. Yeah. But again, the problem with some of these things is we lose our global audience because they don't have references to this. They don't understand what we're saying anyway.
So it's not only are you offending people, but you're just not even being effective as a communicator.
No, we need to say what we mean. Just like we talked about the powwow. Let's just say have a meeting. That is clear for all audiences.
Yeah, that's great. And Richard, yeah, I mean, I'm with Valencia, right? I mean, if there's no malintent, I think that the problem or the error sometimes some of us have made is that when told and confronted with the fact that this is hurtful to people, sometimes we say, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. Because that's, that's just the way I was raised, or that's just the way I talk, or that's just who I am. So, well, if that's who you are, then you're probably not a good person. I'm just saying. If I tell you that it's hurtful to people and you're going to say, well, I don't care, I'm just doubling down, I'm just doing it anyway. Then okay, you're actually choosing to not be a nice person is what's happening. Mm-hmm. And Richard, I love the question. It's it's the perfect question. Thank you so much. Richard says mental certainly in the UK means great fun. That does not translate to me. That is something where Richard's like, says that to me. I don't necessarily know what that means.
Right.
So to Valencia's point, it wouldn't necessarily make sense to me. And here's the other one that, what we're talking kind of about. What about all the sports, right? I'm a sports guy, but all the sports references in business, like, oh, that's a home run deal right there,
Yeah. Same idea. Let's just say what we mean.
Yeah. That, let's get it to the goal line, and then,
right.
It's like, well, yeah, I do this all the time. Thank you, Valencia. Let's see here. Robert Brizuela. Is that Robert checking in? Yeah. We are responsible for our cultural ignorance, and if needed, have access to multitude of resources to enable us to treat each other with value and respect. Yeah.
I like that.
It's a lot of resources. I mean, here we are, but you got to show up, right? So we're doing this show, and here's a resource for people, but you got to watch it, right? You got to spend the hour. You got to watch it. You got to roll your sleeves up. You got to talk to the people, like Valencia was saying. For sure. This is great. Yeah, for sure. Okay, this has been really enlightening. I told you I was going to learn something. I always do. But you know what? We've got let's have a little fun. Valencia, you want to have some fun?
Let's have fun. Yes.
All right, let's have some fun. All right, it's Friday Junior. It's Thursday. All right, let's have some fun. Let's do a little overrated under. So last time we were on the show, you were on the show, Valencia. We didn't have this segment. We're big time now. Okay, we've got lots of stuff going on.
I love it.
We got a new segment called Overrated Underrated. Okay, because I got tired of people riding the fence here. Okay, I need the clear, decisive. You're on one side or the other here on these issues. All right. So let's play a little game, Valencia. It's called Overrated Underrated. It's very simple. I'm going to give you a topic, and you're going to tell me if it's overrated or if it's underrated, and then I'm going to tell you if you're right or not. Okay. Because I'm the decider here on.
Okay.
All right. And also play at home with us too. So get in the comments. I want to know your thoughts. Are these things overrated or underrated? Tim, the producer. What's our first one? Pumpkin spice lattes.
Overrated.
Spice latte. Overrated, she says. Now this is like religion,
for that one.
politics, and Starbucks flavors here. Okay, you're gonna get in some serious trouble here. What do y'all think in the comments? Can at Valencia if she's off base here. Are PSLs overrated or underrated? What do you think? Now you caught the right time of year. You come in here and it's like winter, spring, and people are like not feeling PSLE right now. You come at me with this in October,
forget about it.
Shots fired. It's going down. What do you think? I'd love to know what you're thinking. So me, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a pumpkin spice latte person. I'm way more of a peppermint mocha. Peppermint mocha, Christmas time kind of. Let's get a peppermint mocha, see some lights kind of guy. I'm that kind of a person myself. Pumpkin spice latte is a little sweet, a little. Don't know. I tend to agree. It's overrated. It's over. Let's see. Overrated and overpriced. Jamie says.
Here we go.
Insult to injury. Richard, PSL overrated. This is great. Okay, cool. All right, let's see here. All right, Tim, what's our next one? Finishing first. Came first, your last. Overrated or underrated?
I'm gonna have to say finishing first, overrated. It's overrated.
Okay. All right, finishing first, overrated. Tell me why.
So when I think about, going fast, okay, what's that proverb? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? But that means you have to go slower. So I don't think it's just about finishing first.
I love it. I love the rationale. I think that I think you're right. I mean, you're so right. Like I don't know why we kind of like this is one of those things we teach kids. Like we teach kids all sorts of stuff that we as adults don't do. First of all, okay, it's not like we work in an environment where if you're not first, you're last, you're fired. None of us are necessarily the number one person in our field at what we do. But we still make a great living and we provide for our families and we have a self-actualization and we enjoy our jobs and blah, blah, blah. So finishing first, it's like, what for? Because you're going to like literally kill you, like not literally, but you're going to sacrifice everything else in your life to be number one at something. Yeah. It better be worth everything else. So I think you're right. And I'm going to add this on it. So here, you know what? Let's get real controversial. I know Valencia's like worried. Now let's get real controversial. Participation trophies is the flip side of finishing first. And I have a very hot take on this.
Okay.
I want to hear from people in the audience first before you answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the audience, participation. Tim, can we throw this one up in the banners just for a hot one, please? Tim, I know I'm throwing curveball. He's like, man, I'm just guesting here as the producer. You throwing hot ones up. Yeah, throw this up there. Participation trophies, overrated or underrated? Get in the comments. Let me know what you think. I have strong opinions about this. I'm going to ask you, Valencia. Participation trophies. Underrated or overrated?
So I grew up in the era of being incredibly excited for field day. Okay, so this is where my mind
What
goes.
was your sport? What was your sport in field day?
Oh, racing. It was just the individual.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring home as many blue ribbons as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Not the red, not the gold. It was always the blue ribbons.
Finishing first. Miss finishing first over here all the time. Okay. All right.
I mean, yeah, it was fun. Like getting the ribbons was great. You felt accomplished. Yeah, but now I think in elementary school,
I'm thinking about you winning first and me coming in last, and you being all like about like anti-participation trophies, and me being like, "That's all I get."
You're gonna take your white ribbon. Give me that. No,
the white generic ribbon. It's not blue. It's not red. It's like just this white. Like, yeah, that's what I get.
I mean, I think competition is healthy, and I think it's okay for. And I'll use the being in elementary school as the example. I think it's okay to know that people have strengths in other areas, right? I never won the sack race. That's okay.
Because you were winning the 40-yard dash.
Event.
Yeah, you had your event. Some of us didn't have any events, okay, Valencia? All right. Some of us couldn't win a 3-legged race, with 2 legs, all right? Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's see what people say here. People are in the comments here, and I love it when people get in the comments. This is great. Finishing first, overrated, room for error. Finishing first always means it can only get worse next time. Trauma of a Man City fan. Okay, cool. Mary Beth, finishing first sometimes overrated, but not this year in regards to college hoops. See, everybody loves finishing first when you're first. Really want my team to finish first in March. Mm-hmm. Will you still love them if they don't? Pam, overrated. Overrated. Competition builds character and encourage excellence. Okay. He's talking about. They're talking about participation trophies now. This is when it's going to get ugly. Let's see what happens. Mike Filia, participation trophies are fine for 5-year-olds. Once they start keeping score, then you get rid of them. Mike has 3 sons who played professional baseball. Nice. Very high achievers. Richard Majewski, this boomer could not believe it when our kids got applause for participating and not winning. What? Richard's booing his own children because they didn't win. That's great. Jamie, participation trophy depends on the age of the child. LinkedIn, and then get the red pens back in teachers' hands. Okay, this is getting traumas unleashed. People are projecting. Aaron Venable, when everyone gets a prize just for participating, there's no motivation to try hard or win. Mm-hmm. It's great for leveling the playing field, but it tends to welcome mediocrity instead of excellence. This is some real MAGA stuff. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not putting that on you. But all right, this is my thought on this, okay? Every single college graduate got a participation trophy. It's called a degree. All you did was show up and not fail miserably. You were hungover half the time. You didn't do your homework. It might have taken you 6 years, but you got your little piece of paper. Okay, and from that, we will hire you or not. You are now permitted to participate in white-collar work for the rest of your life now. That is a participation trophy. Our paychecks every 2 weeks are participation trophies. Mm. Whether we mailed it in or we didn't, as long as we didn't get fired, we get our participation trophy. So I don't think that we like to say, well, in the real world. No, in the real world, you get a participation trophy every 2 weeks. Okay, stop playing. All right, people go to work and make the donuts every day, and 30 years later they retire and blah 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 blah, and their whole time is participation trophy. So, kind of going to this whole winning thing. It's like it's perfectly fine to go into the workforce and not want to win, and just want to contribute and do your part and be accepted as an individual and just contribute and you're not necessarily defining yourself by your merits as a worker. and what you accomplish in the workforce and in society, as much as you define yourself by maybe how good of a person am I? Am I a good family member? Am I a good father and mother to my children? Am I a good brother and sister? Am I a good husband and wife? You know, and there's things that are so much more important than winning. Right?
Yeah.
You know, and you know what else I'm going to say? The last thing I'm going to say about participation trophies is you showed up. You showed up till the end of the season. Because there's some we all been there, you know, where you quit in the middle of the season because it's hard, the practices stink, it's cold, it's, you know, didn't line up, you know, you can't watch The Simpsons now or something. You know, that was me with Cub Scouts. But the point is, at the end of the year, you get a participation trophy because you showed up and you were a good teammate. You may not have scored a goal, but you showed up every day. And to me, showing up every day is a lot more important than winning. And I think that's what we're teaching our kids. And that's why I think participation trophies are important.
Well said, Ben.
Thank you. I love hot takes. And you know what? If you don't agree with me, that's fine. Just won't show your comment. All right. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I'll show everybody's comment. Do we have another one, Tim? Being popular. Overrated or underrated?
Overrated.
Why?
You can be popular for the wrong reasons.
Oh, yeah. I love how it's all go back to school. Like, yeah, being popular for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, being popular doesn't necessarily equal success, right? What are you popular for? Yeah, so I go with overrated.
I go with overrated too. And the irony here is when you stop caring if you're popular, you might find yourself being pretty popular. You know, you find yourself being like kind of like in a good, like in a sustainable way, right? Like the cool kids in school, like, you know, it's like, and then like life goes on, and then like who are the real cool kids? It's like the ones that like kind of focus on what was important, you know, and then like all of a sudden they have like good careers and things like that versus chasing stuff like that was very temporary. Yeah, I agree with you on this one. Timmy, we got another one. Whitening toothpaste. Whitening toothpaste, overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
Underrated. I feel like you're speaking to me right now, Valencia. Okay, I feel like why is it underrated?
I mean, you know, there's so much to be said with a smile, and
I'm super self-conscious right now. I don't feel safe here right now. I don't feel like I can bring my whole self to this podcast.
No. Teeth in any color are fine. I don't think you can find a toothpaste on the market these days without whitening in it. But
that's great. Oh, that's great. That is great. All right, we got one more, Tim. Gender reveal parties. Overrated or underrated?
Overrated.
Wow. Overrated. You know, I'm gonna say on this, this is fun. Gender reveal parties. Oh gosh, this is interesting. These seem like a new phenomenon. I don't know how new they are. Let me know in the comments if you have any idea of when we started doing this as a society. I'm kind of a fan of like some of the crazy, like the smoke bombs and like the piñatas and like I'm a party guy too. So kind of any reason to get I would like to see these done as adults more. Like I think the LGBTQ community, I think this would be more interesting to me than the kid, because I don't know if I care about the kid yet. So I think we should have more parties around people like kind of coming out. But I'm gonna say I think I can't say they're underrated because people make a big deal about them. I'm gonna say they're overrated. Let's see, we got people coming in here. Look at this. Overrated. Yeah. I think people are tired of going to these, like getting invited to these things. Overrated. People get killed with some goofy things. People get killed. Oh gosh, Jamie, geez. Can you put a link in the comments? What's a gender reveal party? I don't get out much. See, Richard, you might have missed this one. This might not have been like your generation's thing, but your kids are getting older, so you're going to start seeing these things. Your kids are going to invite you to something, and they're like, listen, we got the gender, but we're not telling you what it's going to be. It's in an envelope, whatever, super secret. There's going to be a cake or a smoke bomb. Don't hold anything they ask you to hold, because you might end up like Jamie's talking about. What's the gender? For the baby. So they're having a baby. Somebody's having a baby, Richard. So that's what it is. Somebody's having a baby. They want a big, exciting way. What's your least favorite gender reveal method, Valencia?
Oh, gosh.
Since you're attacking parties for children.
I'm not attacking parties. I'm sure they're beautiful and lovely in all the ways. It's just, I don't know. There's so many. So I
can't walk it back now. You can't walk it back now.
You know what? I'm just gonna sit this one out.
Did we just learn? We just got better. We learned. You know what? We found the line. There it was. This has been fun, Valencia. Thank you so much for being. Thanks everyone who got active in the comments. The comments were amazing today. You could tell we really spoke to people's to needs and experiences. So thank you everyone for being super active. We wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for you out there. So thank you so much. Hit that like button again. Send some love out to Valencia and Denver. Valencia, before we conclude, I want to ask you, do you want to leave us maybe just with a final thought?
I think, as we continue to have to communicate in virtual spaces where we don't have the luxury of body language and that sort of thing, just to be mindful of the messages and the phrases you use and take time to educate yourself and try and, I would say, simplify, not in an uneducated way, but be clear about what you're saying to ensure you're including everyone and you're offending no one.
I feel like that was directed at me. Thank you very much, Valencia. I appreciate you coming on and making me better, making us all better. I think we all have work to do and our job is never done, but it's important to always embrace the challenge and be curious and loving and empathetic. And thank you so much, Valencia, for being with us and helping lead us through these conversations, as always. Follow Valencia if you don't already do so on LinkedIn. Check out what she does. It's really amazing work. Reach out to her. I'm just volunteering you. Reach out to her if you need some thought leadership in this space. And thanks again, Valencia, for everything.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care, everybody. We will see you next week.